Okay, welcome to week six of Introduction to Corrections. And really moving on fast. We're at the past the halfway point. Got 5 more weeks to go, and the quarter is moving on. And so I am going to go ahead and get started. Sharing the screen here. Okay. Let's go back to the course home. Okay. And let's see. Again, remind you of my phone number and remind you how open I am as far as reaching me. And I encourage you to email me, call, or text me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. You already know how that works. And then I remind you that you're required to conduct research for all papers. That means the sole source of your papers cannot be the text. You'll lose 2 points if you use just the text. And then all written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body and references at the end. And then, of course, reminding you that our next lecture will take place in week 8. Then we'll have one more after that for week 10. So let's take a look at our announcements for the week. Back to course home, and let's go to more. There we go. Okay, the prison experience, male versus female. To prepare for this, you would read sections 6, 8, 9, and 10 of the corrections text and complete the activity classification. Myth versus facts and some thoughts from a prison lieutenant. We'll take a look at that at the end. And then your discussion post, initial post was due last night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Unique issues to female inmates, and judging from the ones I've read, they've been pretty good. I responded to a couple. And then your reply post is due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And again, I remind you, your discussion posts should not just be one-liners. They should indicate that you've given some thought to the question and that the details that you present should be laid out and thought out. Finally, the written assignment, 3 issues in prisons today and the Stanford prison experience. All written assignments, including this one, is due this Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I remind you that you want to start strong and finish strong, and then you will finish this course very well. And then I remind you of my motto: adversity is a springboard to success. You're always going to run across some adversity. We all do. So be ready to use that to launch you and not to cause you to quit. Let's take a quick view at the calendar for the week. And the calendar for the week repeats what I just gave: the written assignment, the reading assignment, your initial post, the live lecture now, your reply post, and then the written assignment. You have 3 issues in male prisons today, and tells you how many pages is required, and then it tells you about Stanford prison experience, and this requires 1 to 2 pages. And critical thinking is what I'm going to look at. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly, and then finally your quiz that takes place. All right. So now let's take a look at the actual module. Okay. Let's look at the assignments. Okay. Well, let's go back because I want to do the actual assignments before I go to this part. Let's click on the assignments. Okay. You got 2 written assignments this week. 1, 3 issues in prisons today, and you are supposed to make sure that you explain what you believe are the top 3 issues in male prisons today. And in the second part of your paper, for each issue that you identify of the 3 issues, offer a suggested solution as to how the criminal justice system can respond, improve, or address the issue. Make sure that you know your grammar and spelling are correct, and make sure that you have citations and references. That's the APA format, which I talked about earlier. And then make sure that you run your papers through Grammarly, as I said before, because I will run your papers through Grammarly to make sure. Make sure you have a cover sheet and then your reference page in addition to the citations in the body. And then the second written assignment, Stanford Prison Experience, and it gives you the location for the information, which is this one right here. So, follow the slideshow, view the video, audio clips. When finished, answer these questions in essay form, and make sure that you answer all 4 questions. Citations, references, APA format is required. Very important. Very, very, very important. And then, of course, your discussion posts. Okay? So now let's go back and let's take a look at the lessons. Okay. Of course, you have the assignments. Again, you're reading. And then you want to look at the section on classification, myth versus fact, which we're going to look at in just a few minutes. And then some thoughts from a prison lieutenant. It's interesting. I have a prison lieutenant as well, now she's not a lieutenant. She was a lieutenant for about 10 years at the Stateville Correction Prison out in Joliet. Well, it's not Joliet. It's really Crest Hill, Illinois, but people know it as Joliet area. And she's been there for a long, long time, over 10 years. She's no longer a lieutenant. She's a major now. And so anyway, 3 issues in prisons today: your written assignment, and your Stanford Prison Experience, and your discussion. Now, it doesn't mention the quiz on here, but there is a quiz. I'm sure there's a quiz. I thought that the assignment said quiz. Let's go back, because I thought I saw quiz in here. Let's go down and look at the bottom. No, there is no quiz. Okay. So there's no quiz this week. So I stand corrected. So let's go back to the calendar. Let's fix that. let's remove it. Okay, so now that's it. So we have that corrected in this core class. I have to go and correct it in the other one. So let's go back to Module 6. I don't think that on the announcements. Again, let's take a look and make sure. I don't think that it's on here. Nope, no, it's not on here either. So there is no quiz this week. So my error in putting it in the calendar. Okay, so let's go back. So you have 2 written assignments and a discussion post in addition to your reading assignment that you have for the week. Okay, let's go back to the lesson content. And let's look at, talk a little bit about classification. And so we talk about different things that happen in prison, what takes place when a person goes to prison, and when you first come in, there's a thing called orientation, and orientation is where you're introduced to what's expected of you while you're in prison. As it says here, the rules and regulations. Then usually your pictures are taken. You're given a number, which is your inmate number that you have. And so, and in prisons, depending on the seriousness of the offense or the length of the sentence, you're classified. And so the higher the sentence or the more severe the act was that put you in prison, you will have a higher level. You'll be considered as a higher risk level. That is, if you committed a nonviolent, your risk level is lower than a violent offense. There's also individual case plans impact the decision as to where to place the inmate. And then if there is some need, and you know, this can get better. If there's a need for certain programs, drug treatment, if there's education or job skills, can also affect the assignment facility. Those things, again, once again, the biggest classification is the risk level based upon the offense. Once you're incarcerated, there's a change. You're no longer associated with the people that you were. You are, it says, you are socialized in the inmate code. This is also known as prisonization, as certain customs and habits that you had outside, such as how you maybe even got up, or even sometimes how many times you went to the washroom, sometimes your eating habits, and all of that changed. And so then you'll also be exposed to people from different backgrounds, cultures, different gangs, and it says that there'll be slang, some of the slang that you may never even heard because it's not from where you are, particularly if you are in an area and you commit a crime and you are away from where you actually were raised or living or accustomed to. You might have some different language, some slang, jargon, and so forth. So many of these activities also involve dealing with contraband, and contraband can be a number of things, weapons, drugs, alcohol, even certain type of clothing that can set off things, colors of clothing and things of that nature. Contraband can also include magazines, books, things, you know, there's some people who have had pornography and things of that nature. These are all considered as contraband. 2 important issues to prison are sex and violence. It says, although sexual victimization is less persuasive than originally thought, it does occur. It does occur. And then there was an act that was passed in 2003 by President Bush, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which provides information and training to inmates, staff, violence, and it deals with the issues that prisoners are exposed to while they're in prison of a sexual nature. Of course, though, there are always inmate assaults on the staff and other inmates. Just the other day, there was a prison that I saw on the news, and they put it on what they call lockdown whenever there is a overtake or an attempted overtake or some violence or it gets out of hand at the prison. And people are often injured very seriously, and some are even killed. And so it makes it hard for the staff to guard the prison, and it's a very important thing. There's oftentimes a staff shortage in many, many, many prisons. And so it says here that many of the same issues also apply to women prisons. However, though, as you have correctly pointed out in your discussion forum this week, there are some issues that are specifically as relates to correction facilities for females are there. And female population in prisons is increasing, and females are more likely than males to be convicted of nonviolent crimes and incarcerated for more passive roles in person or drug crimes. As a matter of fact, I have often said this, that many females end up going to prison because of a guy, a male person that they're even married to or in a relationship with. Most of the time it's one where they're not married, but anyway, it's their partner that caused them to end up in prison, and something takes place that creates the situation. They'll have them to assist them with a crime, and they will find themselves in prison as a result. And then some unique issues to prison is that women are away from their family and friends. You have already addressed the issue of the fact that one of the main issues is that it's harder for the female to operate being away from their children than it is for males. And then oftentimes you have the issue of female pregnancy, where females are incarcerated and the child is actually born at the prison, and then the child is not always, because they don't have the facilities, able to stay with the mother, and they're separated, and there are all kinds of problems. And then you know, and I know, that there's a postpartum issue, which is not adequately addressed in prison and results in a number of instances where mothers, after delivering children and they're taken away, will attempt suicide. And so that's just some of the things it says. Prisonization also occurs with females, and the socialization process involves kinship networks, motherhood and health issues, as I talked about just a few minutes ago, the motherhood issues. But the health issues, there are certain health issues that females have, again, not only just because of children, but because of separation from family. Women have a tendency to attempt to commit suicide on a greater number than males do. And then, of course, the issue of sexual abuse takes place in women's prisons. That comes from within, but most of the time it comes from, a lot of times I should say, comes from the guards or the correction officers themselves, who continue to assault females. And the issue is that the females generally aren't believed unless there's some proof. And so because it's usually going to take some video evidence to try to corroborate an allegation by a female that she's been sexually assaulted by a male guard. And then, of course, so if that male guard finds themselves in a position where there is continued complaints from multiple parties, then there might be some different bases. But here's the problem: is that there are a number of females who are still going to be victims before that takes place. So important for those things. And those are just a few of the things that takes place regarding classification. Now, myth versus fact. This is something that you can work yourself. There are some misconceptions regarding prison life, and it tells you to review the following myths and which ones are facts. And here's a myth. Inmates easily adjust to prison life. Do you think that's myth or fact? I think that it's myth. Let's see. Because it says that, and it is myth, because depression and difficulties are common as prisonization occurs. Well, of course, you're taken out of your normal life, and then you're placed into an environment that's different. So it is inmates easily adjust. That's a myth. That is a myth. Prisons are controlled and inmates closely monitored. That's kind of a mixture, but I'll say fact. Let's see what it says. Many prisons are controlled by gangs and not the correctional staff. So from that perspective, if you look at it, that is a reality, but why is that? What makes it true? Prisons are controlled by inmates, are controlled and inmates closely monitored. That may be true. However, though, the truth of the matter is that, as it says here, that the gangs control behind the scenes because, number one, there are more of them than there are actual correction officers. And so the shortage creates a real problem. Next. Contraband is rare, true or false? That's a myth, because contraband is all over the place. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, and other unrest are common in all prisons, and it comes in a number of forms. Most of the time, the contraband doesn't come from visitors because that's pretty heavily monitored. Most of the time, the contraband comes in through guards themselves who work there. I had a couple of instances where I represented people who were charged with this very thing, and in fact, one of them, he ended up providing things that were not good. He didn't provide weapons, but what he did was there was some drugs and things like that. Here's what some people didn't realize, is that, for example, this guy was getting in magazines and books that appeared to be okay, sports books, sports magazines, so forth. But here's the deal. Those pages had been soaked in drugs and then dried, and then they were pressed out so you couldn't tell. But what happened is that those, and actually the person didn't know it. He didn't know it. He checked it for razor blades and other things like that. But what he was really doing was providing drugs, because what the inmate would do is chew the paper, and they would get high with that, and that's one of the ways. But there is also oftentimes individuals who are able to, now they're texting, emailing, and all other kind of things outside of prison. Okay. Due to tight control, myth. Due to tight control, assaults are rare. Due to tight controls, assaults are rare. No, being a myth, there are often prison. Inmates commit more than 16,000 annual assaults against staff, inmates, and ongoing problems there. So again, it speaks to the fact that there's a real shortage in the prisons. Here's a myth. Prison guards enjoy their power and fight rehabilitation efforts. And here's the submission. Correctional officers are educated and highly trained. Most favor rehabilitation and don't hold any animosity toward inmates. So they want to try to help the inmates. That's the biggest part of what prison guards want to do. They want to help individuals as opposed to punish them or make them angry. Because when you make them angry, then you're going to have some control issues. Just a few more here. Women are seldom sent to prison. That is false. Gender-neutral prison sentencing reform have placed more women behind bars, and that was what I was saying a little earlier. So more women are sent to prison. I already elaborated on the reasons. Female inmates from quasi-family units in prison include same-sex relationships. That's true now. Females today learn to mistrust more and avoid forming close relationship with other inmates. So that takes place quite a bit in prisons now, isolation and things of that nature. The majority of female inmates are young and unattached. You will find that approximately 60% of all female inmates in state and federal prison are mothers. And that was one of the issues I addressed earlier. And that's the end of that exercise. Okay. So there's some myths about prison, and there's some things that are taking place. So, okay. Let's see if we can get this video. Thoughts from a prison lieutenant.
I'm a corrections lieutenant at the Minnesota Corrections Facility in St. Cloud, which is our intake facility for the whole department of Minnesota. I've been at the department for 28 years. I started as a corrections officer, promoted to corrections sergeant, and now my current position, corrections lieutenant. I am also the team leader for our special operations response team, and I also do a lot of training in that area.
So what do you need to be a corrections officer? What are the minimum requirements?
GED or high school diploma, You apply online, and then they set up the testing. The test consists of a writing component and a video component. If you pass that test, you are granted an oral interview, a series of questions that they all get scored, and then if you pass that, then all candidates who pass that will fill out a form for a criminal background check, predatory offender check, and a criminal history check. So then they'll start doing that. If you pass all those, then you'll get offered a job. You get on a list to get offered a job. You need to be, can't be incarcerated within the past year, and if you were, you need to provide documentation that you're off supervised parole or release time, proving that's been completed.
Okay, so you do not need a 2-year degree or any experience. High school is sufficient.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you get hired, you'll have to pass a physical exam. There'll be drug testing, TB testing, and then once you pass all that, you do 6 weeks in an academy, and then first year of employment is probation. Okay, so lots of training that goes along, on-the-job training that goes along with this. Yeah, the vast majority of that first 6 weeks is on the job, and then after that, you start on the job shadowing and stuff. Okay, so if I were hired as a correctional officer, is there a typical day, or what would my day look like? Well, you drive to work, pick up your radio, your keys, you put on everybody has to wear a utility belt with minimum of cuffs and chemical irritants. You report to your post. You could work anywhere from a living unit to a secure control center to supervising an offender crew. There's a lot of different posts for officers. The average day has a lot of observation and can seem to be boring at times, but that can escalate to very dangerous and wild times in a split second. A lot of our situations are just dealt with officer presence, communication skills, verbal directives. We can mainly get our compliance that way. When that doesn't work, you go up to the force continuum all the way up to maybe weapons, whatever it might be. I mean, it's not uncommon. We have fights quite regular. We deal with a lot of incompatibility issues and people getting extorted, and it's just ongoing. Okay, so you mentioned that you are the intake facility. So do you classify inmates? Can you talk about that and what level of security is this institution? The security levels for the institutions go 1 through 5, with 1 being the minimum, 5 being max. They determine the facility's security levels with operational needs and structural needs. For instance, a level 4 has requirements for mandatory armed outside patrol, or you might have secure perimeter mandates for armed officers on the wall, things like that. So once you designate facilities, when they come into our facility, they're seen right in the intake area. They're fingerprinted. They're asked a series of questions. They take pictures of tattoos. They see health service right away, and then they're brought into the intake unit, which is an area I supervise. They spend about 30 days in there. They go through orientation. First whole day they're there, and then they're seen by health service, like conjugate alcohol, drug assessment, education testing. A lot of things going on to help their classification. Within the 14 days, first 14 days, their case manager should enter data relevant to their classification score. And their classification score is a number, and it's the factors of your current criminal conviction, what that is, your past criminal history in the last 10 years, your behavior in prison in the last 5 years, and then there are blocks in the classification. For instance, if you have life without parole, you cannot go below level 5 no matter what. So it doesn't matter any of the other factors. So then, the 28 to 45 days of classification officer and PRT team need, they give you a score, and that'll determine your classification. And at that point, we'll decide by classification, treatment needs, and there's a number of factors of what facility you need to move to, and then we'll transfer from there. And it's not uncommon for us to get 40 offenders in a day, or 40 out, so it will be very busy. So the intake part doesn't happen in a day or two.
actually takes a few weeks.
Yeah, when they come into E-House, they probably spend approximately the first 30 days in the intake unit, then they move to the next unit. Sometimes they can transfer right from that house. Probably in about 3 weeks, they're done with most of their intake needs, all their assessments and testing and stuff like that.
You talked about a lot of things that a correctional officer might do, and in our text we've talked a lot about professionalism and issues related to just being healthy as someone who works in this field. What contributes to correctional officer professionalism? Well,
you're supposed to treat everybody with respect, be courteous, and give respect, and give respect. People that seem to be successful in this career have the ability to deal with the stress that we have in this type of environment. They have a way to deal with it away from work also. They tend to take the high road in tough situations.
Do you have advice for students today who are interested in going into this field?
Yeah, most people that are good corrections officers are good observers, they're good communicators, they have good de-escalation skills. I mean, these people are incarcerated, but they are human beings, and you treat them as such. As long as that's what they command at the time, if they escalate beyond that, that's another situation. But those are the people that are most successful. And like I said, there are a lot of rewards as far as dealing with people. Sometimes you can make a difference in situations. But keep in mind, we go from, it can be very boring, it can get complacent, to very exciting in a split second. So you see a lot of different things around here. Really, even though it seems dull, there never is a dull moment around here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's a good piece of advice. One of the things that I noted is that he was talking about the requirements, high school. That's changing as every area of criminal justice is. It used to be just high school, but you guys are in college now, because one of the issues that all law enforcement is seeking to do is produce more professionalism in the field, and it's been determined that the more education that you have, then it causes you to approach your job better and to make you a better correction officer. So while the minimum requirements might be high school in many areas, that's starting to change, and that's why we encourage our students to continue on. As I was telling you about the young lady who she was a lieutenant in the prison for a long time. She had her associate's degree. She got it with honors. She was in about three or four of my classes, and then she went on and got her bachelor's degree in corrections, and so now she was promoted to major. So what is it that I'm saying is the thing that we started talking about from week one, and that is to continue to become educated. The more education you have, the more likely you'll have opportunities to climb to higher levels within the profession itself, and that's a fact. Before I leave this section here, let's take a look at just so you'll see. Week 7, you're going to be dealing with correctional programs, and then you're going to make sure that you do this written assignment, your state's programs. Again, it usually gives you a requirement here. Let's see, it tells you 2-page paper. So make sure that is a 2-page paper, and you're going to also have APA citations. And of course, please run your papers through Grammarly, and then your discussion posts, and then your course interview project report. Remember to satisfy the requirements for this one by looking at the information that I shared with you that they gave us as faculty, your course rubric, and I'm going to let you see this in a second. Let's go into look at the rubric, open it up. So then for week 7, you have one for week 2, 4, 7, and the module tells you this is regarding now not your written assignment, but this is regarding your course project, and it tells you what things that you can do to get the maximum of points, maximum 5 points, and then 3 points. This is how I actually grade it, and then it's a total of 25 points for this assignment, and you want to satisfy everything in each of those sections there. So I wanted to pass that on to you as well. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, let's stop sharing. And then, of course, before I do that, let's go up to your written assignment. Your written assignments tells you what each week you have a rubric, and it reminds you. So for week 6, week 7, make sure that in addition to the satisfying the page requirements, that you also have done these things for this week and then next week, so you can maximize all of your points there. Okay. So anyway, that's that. I am going to be sending you an archive of this lecture, and hoping that in week 8 that I'll see some of you. I've had a few of you in lectures, and then in week 10, the final lecture. So with that, I'm going to say good night.